In this part 2 of my lecture on integrated approach for sustainable development and prosperity of tribal communities, I am going to show how solar power, we may say newer renewable energy technologies, can really augment and enhance the sustainable development of rural communities in multiple ways. Okay, now in the first part we showed the various schemes that are going, but those are schemes that are sort of fragment, into suiting different topics like healthcare schemes. There are three, four schemes. There are education schemes. Of course, there are education affirmative action plan like scholarships for tribals and so on, which was not exactly, is more of financial support for their tribals. However, when we look, and then agricultural schemes came out to be separate and so on. But let us look at the total need of a community. So I am going to propose a model which I call community Swaraj, like the village Swaraj of Mahatma Gandhi. The village Swaraj, I thought why I have to use a different word, is that usually villages are too small to be critical for economic activities. A community may be a cluster of villages or a cluster of population which is of sufficient size, in which case we can look at them holistically rather than only looking at the village Swaraj model. Or often it's a better way to communicate the concept of village Swaraj, because there is a certain interdependencies. For example, healthcare requires electricity that is powered by solar. But then if I put say schooling and healthcare in one area, people in the neighborhood also have to be transported to this area. And that means they require some kind of transportation. Fortunately, again, solar powered or charged electric vehicles of the rural kind can come in handy. So you can add electric vehicles transportation into the scheme of things, so that we can achieve not just sustainable development, sustainable prosperity for the communities. That is the basic idea why I am saying this. Okay, now so I would call it the modern version with today's internet connectivity, everything reaching. Note that pretty soon satellites are going to broadcast internet, so there is no place in the world where you cannot reach internet. Various companies are launching, Google, SpaceX are all launching satellites, and they will become quite affordable also. Of course, now we are getting into already, we have got the 4G, 5G connectivity is coming, and there are ways to reach Wi-Fi hotspots to various places, which has been done successfully. So reaching internet completely changes the picture. Okay. Now we take a cluster of critical size, that is cluster of population. A village is too small to provide for itself. Typically, I would target a population of something like 5,000 to 10,000 people living in a set of villages or hamlets, depending on the type of this, because there may be tiny hamlets also, but they can all be serviced by one effective service center, which may be located not more than say 4 or 5 kilometers from their place. So within a radius of 4 or 5 kilometers, we may have this much population. That is possible. So for the larger tribal notified areas, this is certainly possible. So how do we reach this or conceptualize this community Swaraj? So these are essential, this lecture that way essentially looks at a future approach or emerging approach possible for sustainable development, and even more than that, sustainable prosperity of the local population. Okay. Now there are, so various services become viable because a population of 5,000 or 10,000, it typically has enough critical population of say mothers and children or those people in the school going age. There are enough old age persons who require attention. So the population is above critical. If you look at recent developments in national health schemes, there are government appointed for even for rural population in general and tribal population in particular. Now, the primary clinics were about the place where they stopped, but primary clinics often have to address more than 1 lakh population or more, and often they are not that well equipped or they were done because we have not yet addressed telemedicine and other IT enabled healthcare facilities which are possible. But in recent times, this national health scheme also recognizes sub-primary clinics. These sub-primary clinics are targeted at populations of 5,000. So the 5,000 population we are talking about for sustainable prosperity model also can be built around this sub-primary population for healthcare. That coincidence is a good thing, and the population as a whole need essential services, and also they can participate in community driven value added employment and value added schemes, etc. So they also may have sufficient productivity in terms of agriculture and other capabilities. And such population addressing also can include disaster management for them in the same place we can do. So a district will have several population clusters of this. The next slide is a little crowded, but hopefully it is readable. Now, why I am going to emphasize solar power and powering all this. Now, there are district collector government schemes. There has to be a community workshop which is needed for their handicrafts, skills training, etc. And if you have workshop, you need to have skills education services which have to come from the local education institutions. Now, farm inputs, compost production, biopest controller, all these are needed when you do good quality productivity to enhance the productivity of the agriculture. They need drinking water generation, sanitation, and other issues. Academic institutions' involvement becomes very important in this model, and solar power also becomes the main energy or powerhouse of this. So we are going to show how we can produce such clusters and make them very economical. Now, we have to involve local higher education institutions in this. These include the agricultural university, because that will form the training and support for various agriculture related initiatives. The local university like anthropology, humanities school to conduct demographic surveys and guide the the integration of these kind of various activities. Open university can reach out training and skills education to these clusters. Local technical institutions can develop products which are suitable. For example, solar powered cold storage. How are we going to design and maintain them? So we can use the consulting capacity of the faculty and senior students there to put. Similarly, the maintenance and design of drip and lift irrigation and so on. Drinking water is again, there are nowadays very interesting concept marketed already called atmospheric water generators. That is, just atmospheric condensation of moisture provides clean drinking water. These are all done and they all require certain technology which local institutions can support. Of course, health institutions to do the various health services. Now, how will they reach? So, we will have a concept of mobile clinics and mobile support from students and various other active workers going to the cluster centers. So, but the entire cluster activity requires what we call a community cluster enterprise. This enterprise needs a geographic location which is somewhere in the center of this population, which is the cluster. So, what are the things it will have? There are a variety of things this cluster can have. First of all, you can have an agri-processing and packaging center. Now, in Tamil Nadu, I understand there are at least 10 districts which have successfully launched agri-processing center for horticultural crops. So, their products are nice and clean and they fetch good market price and they are also taking care of transportation and marketing. So we can do that here also. The second is, of course, first is the solar power. Now, the solar power can come from the rooftops of the buildings associated with the cluster enterprise, as well as it can be what are called solar agricultural farms, where solar panels are a little spaced apart. This concept has become popular even in the United States under the new and renewable energy laboratory initiatives in the United States. Under these solar panels, you can create a variety of crops also. So the solar panel area is not wasted. It is actually giving good additional agricultural productivity. We can use it to, for example, to create seedlings, plants, which can be given to the as farm inputs to the farms of the tribals and so on. So the solar power can be of the size of, depending on 100 kilowatt to 1 megawatt, that's the kind of capacity we can think, and so we need to have this integrated into that. Now, of course, one can connect this solar power to the grid also, but that is not the aim. Our aim is to maximize the solar energy falling in that area for the value added activities in that area. So production of farm inputs, compost, biopest control products, these are in addition to the agricultural processing packaging can be added. So we give inputs to the farmers also, the tribal farmers, for whatever they need. And even trees require, if you have fruit trees and all, they require pest control and other crop. So those can be given as inputs. But this will give them reduced cost inputs. If you take the Amul model of dairy, every small farm, also if they, depending upon the amount of milk they supply, in proportion to that they give certain services to the dairy farmer. Likewise, if these people are producing, they can also produce and subsidized the farm inputs cost. So they won't be subject to the market pressure on farm inputs, which is a very critical thing in the agricultural space. Then we create a community hacker space, which is a kind of workshop, which is a community shared workshop. It can be used for crafts. Also, it can be used for skilling. Also, you station people there who can go to the residential villages or hamlets and ensure their water supply or drip irrigation things. They are all plumbing, electrician, they are all in health condition. Of course, you need maintenance of the solar power farm also. So such people can be stationed in this place. It will be good to add a dairy and animal husbandry because the droppings of animals become very important for composting also. And agricultural compost is because we have to convert more and more towards organic cultivation, which has become very popular. So these are all agriculture itself related. In addition, of course, workshop and skills related, which also nurture their craft. And then an interesting area will be adding a health clinic. The entire area, which is together, I call them the heart areas, as I am going to say. Heart standing for health, education, agriculture, residents' amenities, residents' needs, tourism and ecology, environment, crafts, all those together. So you have got HEART, which become the heart areas. So this integrated development of heart areas will affect the entire community of that cluster. It will serve them for the sustainable prosperity, because a healthy community is also a prosperous community. An educated community is also one. So education and mother and child welfare, old age care, even that can become above critical in size, so it can be sustainable. So this health clinic, which will be at the sub-primary level, which is now understood under the national health schemes, can be implemented through this. Now, from the district hospital or nearest some place, we can have mobile clinics visiting this health clinic once or twice, maybe twice a week or so. And then the population there, affected population, can come not more than this distance, within a few kilometers. They can use the electric vehicle also for it. The children's transportation to schooling also can be done by these electric vehicles. So it becomes a very synergy. There is a lot of synergy in this model. So, and since this health clinic can be equipped with some battery backed power for the Wi-Fi hotspot, so that area is covered under a Wi-Fi hotspot, which will allow telemedicine. That means you can consult a remote doctor in a hospital, in a medical college, who is available for this. Uh, for example, Apollo is doing that for its patients, but most interestingly, Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences in Kochi, which is under Mata Amritanandamayi, they conduct telemedicine for Ladakh, Lakshadweep Islands, Andaman Nicobar, people who are otherwise deprived. So these are all done through satellite links provided by ISRO. So there are many ways to get this telemedicine. You can get emergency consultation from the experts in times of need and so on. So another thing is one may use drones from the for transporting. One is medical samples. Of course, we have to have trained nurses in that area. So the pathology samples can be transported for quick testing to a nearby lab in the district. Also, essential medicines also can be transported through drones. Today, these transportations are falling in cost. In fact, it is cheaper to transport them by drones than by road. Okay, because the road actually consumes more petrol. These are only small quantity, and there are now drones available which can transport a few kilos without any problem. And in addition, what we are going to do, integrate the education, that is the primary school, pre-primary area, some playground for the children, etc., in the same place. And the same place, now that Wi-Fi hotspot again helps. Similarly, in the same space, we can give infotainment space for communities, because the school is running in the morning hours. What are you going to do in the afternoon, evening hours? So they can be used for other additional skilling, and it doubles up for cultural performances, the meetings, whatever, or they can watch a program which is on the streamline. And then you have the playground, open air, social and cultural events area that can be added, which will again promote some kind of ecotourism, which can be a kind of place which can develop. So if you look at this, if you can integrate, there is a tremendous gain by integrating the various schemes which are already halfway funded already, but they have to be together. Like there are schemes in healthcare, they will be delivered through sub-primary center here. There are programs in education. Often if you go to the rural tribal area education in the schools, I just got a WhatsApp message which shows how leaky our roofs are. Children are not able to study. Now that will be gone because they will have a solar roof. Like there's so many problems directly or indirectly we resolve by integration, and we also enhance the prosperity by the value added activities in agriculture, processing, crafts and various other skills, drip irrigation, etc. And I have suggested a model of establishing an enterprise and an organogram for that, which will have a chairperson who could be the district collector or a nominee of the district collector, and there is an execution coordination unit which will have certain members from, of course, members from the local community, then education skills program, technology services, there are certain health and marketing, e-learning, all that can be addressed through a community driven approach. And you can even combine several clusters in the neighborhood into a larger powerful entity at the district level. If you look at the Amul model, they have village level collection of milk, and then there are district level marketing federation available, and district level produces inputs for farms as well as they process the milk for value added products. So there are several models possible with this community cluster enterprise. So how do we go about it? We may have to identify a 15-acre land, which may be government land, through the district collector to set up this community cluster enterprise. And within that, we develop these build. Already those schemes which are funded from the government can set up the place here, like health clinic, education for schools and all. They can come under the government funding heads. But in addition, I am proposing we put solar powered cold storage, which is very important for perishable crops, horticulture and all. And there are technologies available now which can be taken the local technical engineering institution in the local place to help and build this initially. In fact, the students, for them it's a great project. Then post-harvest management area and agri-processing unit, farm inputs unit, and the workshop, multi-utility workshop for craft, skills, training, etc. And then education and community infotainment area. All these now come together. That means the heart is really full. Okay, and so now with the drip irrigation, there are several other problems overcome. Land otherwise not seen as productive in agriculture, particularly sloping lands in the hillsides, become very cultivable with drip irrigation and organic cultivation by the compost and other ingredients that will come from this. In fact, we can have community hall with playground for get-togethers, performing arts, facilities, etc. And the IT facilities, suddenly what we call as Industry 4.0 can slowly trickle down to the community cluster enterprise area also, providing people various IT-enabled services. We can introduce geographic information system based map skills. This has been done in the Barefoot University in Rajasthan very successfully. We can learn. Another thing we can do is certain tribal areas happen to be in the mining area. Often they were tribal population was displaced from the mining area, and these mines have become open cast or fallow lands. After the mine, these mines maybe survive for 10 years, 20 years. After they become abandoned. Give the abandoned mine land back to them, and we can recover the land using animal husbandry practices. I mean, there are many examples of that. And the same tribals are getting jobs in redeveloping their own land which they once possessed, but it is now abandoned. So all these kind of new possibilities arise. Okay, so going back, so now we say we can holistically address health, education, agriculture, resident services, like for example, visiting nurses at homes, even carrying telemedicine potentially if the Wi-Fi strength is there, or at least in the nearby sub-primary clinic in the community cluster enterprises, and then promoting culture, water, environment, tourism, all these become holistically addressed, so it becomes sustainable. Okay, otherwise small schemes continuously require government budget inputs. They don't otherwise survive. So now these can be self-reliant with the income that will be coming from the value-added products in the community cluster. Now, how do we manage such a complex thing? People will say, where is the education? Where are the talents? How do we manage this? I suggest that every district must set up a district development consortium, which is very vital. It involves all the stakeholders. Stakeholders include local community, which is a tribal community representation, the rural and ST welfare programs and their coordinators, representatives of local NGOs, CSR, and then representatives of educational institutions, district health organization, agriculture related organization. They will have members to form a consortium. This consortium will meet at least, say, every quarter or so, to have a kind of workshop on the progress, issues, etc. So that now you will realize when a healthcare issue has to be addressed, maybe it requires a better IT, better drone delivery, logistics. Who will provide it? Again, so that will not be lost, because these are all multipartite issues. They are best addressed through a consortium approach. The consortium will be chaired by a district collector or nominee, so that this government cooperation becomes automatically available in this. So with this kind of consortium driven development, now there will be one consortium for the entire district with local chapters, so to say. Under each community cluster, there will be one local chapter with local representatives in that area. Otherwise, there are educational and other representatives in this area. With this model of development, you can go very, very far. Knowledge inputs are available, skills inputs are available, design, development, etc. In summary, we propose forming and establishing a community cluster enterprise for the population cluster of tribals of around 5,000 to 10,000. District government may provide land, different welfare programs located in the premises that is under the cluster. Many issues arising like poor school infrastructure, obstacles in health delivery, quality of education and skills training, etc. will get far much mitigated and well improved under this cluster concept. That local transportation supported by electric vehicles is highly maintainable, particularly with the Deshi type of electric vehicles, including pickup trucks and e-rickshaws and such things like that. In fact, this cluster concept can be extended to all rural areas, but with tribals we can have special emphasis and early takeoff because of the funding available under tribal welfare, which is not necessarily available under rural clusters. Okay, the older Pura program, which was envisioned by Abdul Kalam, which was called provision of urban amenities in rural areas, actually is better implemented at the leaf end, at the local end, through community cluster enterprises. So then everything becomes a holistic, smart rural cluster as suited for the industry 4.0. So a lot of things can be further developed. So our vision is that address sustainable rural prosperity, particularly tribal prosperity, holistically by bringing about the synergy within and across the heart areas, that is health, education, agriculture, etc. Make cluster enterprise a role model of sustainable rural prosperity, not just sustainable development for the different regions within the district and across the states and India. And so now just conclude the quotation from Peter Drucker. Knowledge has become the key economic resource and the dominant and perhaps even the only source of competitive advantage. Unless we give the knowledge inputs into the tribal development, we are not going to see tribal prosperity. This community cluster enterprise brings that knowledge empowerment as a natural adjunct in the very methodology that is being suggested. So let us hope India will move to beyond Industry 4.0 even in the remotest tribal community and rural areas. Thank you.